My name is Samuel Turner. I'm 55 years old. And if you stood on the corner of Main and 3rd in my town and asked half a dozen people who know me what kind of man I am, they'd tell you the same thing. Steady, reliable. The sort of quiet you don't notice until it's missing. The sort of man who shows up on time and keeps his word even when no one's watching. That's the face I wore for a long time. The one folks recognize: the soft laugh, the firm handshake, the calloused hands from 40 years of putting up drywall, laying beams, fixing what other people broke. But truth is, there's always another room behind the front door. And the room I lived in a long time had a cracked picture frame on the mantel and a half-empty chair where my wife used to sit. People around town saw the tools, the work truck, the business name on the office door. They didn't see the nights I sat on the porch when the world felt like it was shrinking. They didn't see the boy I raised who stopped coming home the way he used to. I trusted people the way my father taught me: handshake first, questions later, and I paid for that faith in ways I never could have imagined. It wasn't just a bad decision. It was a slow fog that rolled in around us until I woke up one morning and everything that had shaped my life had been rearranged by hands I thought were steady. I didn't wake up to a dramatic scene, no smashed windows, no shouting, just a kind of cavernous silence that felt wrong in a place that had always hummed with life. My truck was gone from the drive, the office lights were dark, and when I checked the accounts there was a hollowness where years of saving and late nights should have been. Somehow, overnight, the trust I'd placed in my own blood had turned into signatures I hadn't signed, into bank transfers that looked clean on paper but were venomous in truth. It's a strange thing, discovering that the people who ate at your table, who called you by your name with easy affection, had been quietly moving bricks from the wall you built together. You don't notice the small motions that add up to betrayal, the extra text messages, the hushed phone calls in the garage, the sudden interest in partnerships and deals that always seem to benefit one side. You notice the big thing first, the emptiness, and then the little things start to make sense in a way that makes your stomach turn. They weren't strangers who stole from me. They were family, and that made the whole thing feel like a slow, purposeful unbuttoning of my life. Michael, my son, who used to run into my arms with sticky fingers and loud laugh, had learned a different language in college and in business, language that measured people by what they could give, not who they were. My cousin Derek, with his easy grin and slick ideas, had never liked work for the work's sake. He liked leverage, the ways you could move other people's labor around like chess pieces. Together they made a pair that slid into my trust the way rust slides into an old nail, gradually, finally, and without alarm until the whole beam gives. When I say they traded trust for greed, I mean it in the most literal way. Conversations I had thought were about the future of the company were in fact well-crafted steps toward pushing me aside. They treated my history like an inconvenient footnote, my name a liability on a contract to be They mapped out their plan with the calm, casual cruelty of people who believe they can remake the world in their own image and know one will challenge them because no one expects those you love to be the ones who stab you in the back. There's a particular kind of pain that comes from being undermined by your own blood. It's not just about losing money or property. It's the erasure of everything you stood for in the eyes of the people who mattered most. I remember standing in the kitchen where Emily used to hum while making coffee, looking at the photograph of our wedding day and feeling suddenly like a ghost in my own life. They thought I was powerless because I'm quiet. They mistook my reserve for weakness. They took for granted that a man who has known hunger, loss, and long winters of grief would fold when faced with deception. What they didn't reckon with was the stubbornness that comes from years of building things with your hands, the stubbornness that says you don't let go of what you built without a fight. I wasn't naive. I had just hoped that blood would mean something different. When that hope was traded for ledgers and forged documents, the world narrowed to a single, bright line of purpose. I needed the truth to come out, not because I wanted to punish for the sake of hurting them, but because honesty was the only way to put the pieces back where they belonged, so I let them think they'd won. I watched them parade what they'd taken like trophies, saw the careless arrogance in their smiles when they talked about the future as if they'd already reaped it, and I kept my mouth shut. There's a kind of power in stillness. I learnt from my father how to wait, how to listen, how to watch the cracks appear in a structure built on sand. Greed makes people sloppy. It makes them shorten their sentences. It makes them reroute money through accounts with lazy signatures. It makes them brag in the wrong conversations. Every careless call I overheard, every rolled-up contract I found in an unlocked drawer was a bread. I followed those crumbs the way a man follows a scent to find shelter slowly, methodically, so that when the day came to confront them, the evidence wouldn't be a rumor but a full archive of proof. And when that day came, it wasn't a scream or a punch that won the space back. It was patience. It was the heavy, quiet weight of documentation and the public unveiling of truth. It was walking into a room where they were already celebrating and laying down. The paper trail like a judge's gavel. They expected me to break, to crumble into the old man they imagined I'd become after losing what I had. They expected me to beg, to make apologies for the life I had lived, to be grateful for the crumbs they left. Instead, when the light hit their lies, their faces changed. Pride curdled into panic. That's when I saw the real aftermath of greed. Not the empty accounts, not even the ruined contracts, but the way it rearranged a person's soul until they no longer recognized themselves. The price of their greed wasn't merely financial. It was a reckoning that left them smaller, exposed, and stunned. And as for me, the man who woke up alone on a morning that felt like betrayal, I learned a new kind of freedom, one born not from revenge itself, but from standing steady enough to make truth matter more than convenience. The lesson I carry now is heavy and clear. Quiet men are not weak. Sometimes we're simply keeping our strength for the one right moment when everything depends on it. I didn't start this life with much beyond 2 hands, that new work and a last name that didn't mean anything outside of our county line. My father was a quiet man, the kind of man who didn't bother trying to impress anyone. He worked long days in a mechanic's shop where the air always smelled like metal dust and engine oil. And when he got home, he would wash his hands at the sink with that rough, cheap soap that never quite took the grease off. He'd come to the dinner table with tired eyes, but no matter how worn out he looked, his voice was steady when he spoke. He believed in things like respect, dignity, doing right because doing right was the only thing you could take to your grave without shame. When he taught me to shake a man's hand, he said it should be firm, not because you're trying to show strength, but because you're promising honesty. A weak handshake, he used to say, means a man ain't sure of his own word. And I took that to heart. Maybe more than anything, my mother, on the other hand, was softness. The sort of woman who could make a house feel like a warm quilt pulled right up under your chin. She didn't care how tired my father was when he came home. She believed a hot meal could fix almost anything. Her cooking was simple, nothing fancy, but when you've worked hard all day, simple, can taste like heaven. She hummed when she cooked, moved like she'd been dancing with the kitchen her whole life. She told me once that caring for people wasn't about big gestures. It was about remembering the small things, like how someone takes their coffee, or which side of the bed they roll off of in the morning. That's how she loved, quiet, steady, like rain that nourishes instead of floods. I grew up in a world that didn't hand out freebies, didn't have shortcuts, didn't believe in complaining your way into comfort. You worked, you sweat, you kept your head down and your word good. That was it. That was the whole philosophy. I didn't realize until later how rare that was. When I was 24, I met Emily, and everything I thought I understood about my life shifted, softened, in places I didn't know were hard. She was warm where I was cautious, bright where I was quiet. If my mother was the reminder that small kindnesses mattered, Emily was the embodiment of them. She had a way of laughing that sounded like the world was lighter than it really was. She saw the good in people, even the ones I saw no reason to trust. Sometimes I thought she saw the good in me more clearly than I saw it myself. She was the kind of woman who turned mornings into something to look forward to. She wanted the walls of our home painted yellow, said it would feel like morning light, even on cloudy days. I thought it was a silly idea at first, but once the paint dried, damned if she wasn't right. The kitchen glowed like hope. We had our son, Michael, not long after. I remember holding him for the first time. Tiny fists clenched like he was born ready for a fight, lungs strong enough to scare the nurses. I didn't cry, but something inside me opened a door I didn't know was locked. That boy was my pride before he could even say my name. When he took his first steps, he went straight to my boots, grabbed one, and tried to lift it. I laughed harder than I had in years. Emily said he wanted to grow into me. I said I hoped he'd grow better. Life was good in ways that didn't need bragging. I worked. Emily made home feel like peace. Michael grew. Summers were long and warm. Winters were slow but cozy. And the years stacked up gentle. Then, the ground shifted. Emily got sick. The kind of sick you don't see coming. It started small fatigue, bruises that shouldn't have been there. And then the doctor said the word that feels like thunder hitting bone: cancer. She tried to be brave. I tried to be all the things she needed. But cancer doesn't bargain. It doesn't care how good you've been, how much love you've given, how many people still need you. It just takes. She was gone before I learned how to accept it. I was 37 when I buried her. I remember standing there in a suit that felt too stiff for the man wearing it, watching wet soil hit the wood of the coffin. It sounded like finality, like the world shutting a door no one wanted closed. After that, something in me went quiet, not angry, not broken, just quiet in a way that settles deep and heavy. Smiles came less. Days were harder. Nights were longer. But I had Michael. I had work. I had responsibility. And responsibility can keep a man going even when his heart feels like a burned-out engine. I raised Michael the best I could. Not perfect, not always graceful, but steady. I made sure the lights stayed on, the meals were warm, and the love was there even when the words weren't. I wasn't the emotional kind of father. I didn't tell him I was proud every day. I didn't shower him with praise. I figured love was proven, not announced. And in some ways, maybe that was my first mistake. He grew up watching me build my contracting business, watching me leave before dawn and come home after dark. I didn't complain. I didn't rush. I just did what needed doing. I thought that example would speak loud enough. When he turned 25, I looked at him and saw a man strong, capable, intelligent. I thought, this is it. I thought we'd work side by side. I thought the business I had poured my back and sweat and years into would eventually pass to him. That one day I'd watch him take the lead while I stood a little further back, proud and quiet, just like my father had done with me. I thought he'd be my legacy. Lord, I didn't know how wrong a father's hope could be. Derek did not arrive in my life with thunder or warning. No, he slipped in quietly, like a shadow at sunset, unnoticed until darkness had already settled. He was my cousin, my Aunt Lydia's boy. I grew up with him, though we were never truly the same. Where I worked to earn every bite of food I put in my mouth, Derek found ways to get others to hand him their plates. He had that kind of smile, the kind that made people let their guard down while he was reaching for their pockets. A charming man, some would say. I say charm is just a blade with sugar on the handle. He had this casual way of acting like life owed him something, like the world was just slow in delivering his reward. He never talked about sacrifice, never talked about sweat on the back of your neck under a sun that refused to show mercy, never talked about patience or responsibility. Derek talked about opportunities. He talked about them like they were birds landing on your shoulder if you just learned how to whistle the right tune. But when I looked at him, really looked, I saw hunger, a hunger that doesn't sleep, a hunger that doesn't care who it eats. At first, I didn't think much of it when he started coming around more. People drift to family sometimes, old bonds, old familiarity. But he didn't come for me. He came for my son. Michael was 25, then full of confidence, not yet tested by the fire of real life. I had been planning to teach him the final ropes of the business, to slowly hand over what I had built with blood in my lungs and sawdust in my skin. He was supposed to learn the value of building something brick by brick, mistake by mistake. But when Derek showed up, everything changed. Michael looked at him the way young men look at fast cars and fast money. Derek wore expensive shoes, but no memory of hard labor on his hands. He talked about investments, about expansion, about growth. He used words too big for the foundation he'd built because he had built nothing at all. But Michael didn't see that. He saw shine. He saw shortcuts. He saw escape from the grind his old man lived by. They started spending time together, a beer on the porch, late-night conversations. But these weren't harmless family chats. I'd walk into a room and find them talking in low voices, the kind that goes silent when someone else steps in. Their laughter always felt half-hidden, like I was the punchline of a joke nobody wanted to repeat. I'd ask, calm, steady, the way I always do, what's this about? Michael would smile, my son, my blood like I was a guest in my own home. Just business, Dad. You wouldn't understand. Times are different now. Different. That word stung more than I let show. Times were different, yes. But character, loyalty, family, those things aren't supposed to shift with the wind. But a father will break his own spine trying to keep his family together. So I swallowed that bitter feeling, buried it under work, and convinced myself it was nothing. Convinced myself that my own son would never let another man family or not turn him against me. But see, trust is a dangerous thing. It's soft. It's slow. And when you give it to the wrong person, they shape it into the very knife they stab you with. I began to notice small changes. Michael no longer asked me how the business was running. He no longer asked for guidance. He no longer stayed late at the job sites with me to learn. Instead, he left early, took calls outside, brushed past conversations like I was inconvenient background noise. And Derek, he was always there, leaning against the wall with that easy grin, hands in his pockets, eyes always moving, always calculating, watching my family, watching my life, watching what I built. And he wasn't just watching, he was measuring how to take it. It didn't happen all at once. Betrayal is rarely loud. It's slow, quiet, patient, like mold growing behind the drywall until suddenly your whole house smells like rot. I remember one night, just one small moment, but it stuck to my ribs. I was sitting at the dinner table, same as always, fork in hand. Michael and Derek were in the doorway, whispering again, laughing. And when I looked up at my son, truly looked, he avoided my eyes. That was when I felt it, the shift, the door closing between us, the bond bending, then cracking, but I held my tongue. I told myself, he's young, he'll learn. Family stays, blood holds, but not all blood is loyal. Some blood is poison. Some blood does not run through your veins. It drips from the knife they bury in your back. And I didn't know it then. But Derek wasn't just trying to get close. He was already inside the house. Already inside my son's head. Already planning the day where I would wake up and realize I was standing alone. And the worst part, I had let him in myself. By the time I reached 52, the business I had spent my life building had grown into something solid, something respected, something that carried my name like a badge. Turner Contracting wasn't just a company, it was the proof of every early morning I fought through. Every winter I worked in frozen mud. Every summer day the sun tried to burn the skin clean off my back. I had a fleet of trucks with my logo printed bold and clean. Folks in the county knew that if I took a job, I finished it right. No shortcuts. No half-done messes. Just honest work. A man's handshake used to mean something, and mine still did. And I remember sitting in my office one evening, paperwork spread out, the smell of sawdust still lingering in my clothes. And Michael walked in, not the boy who used to hand me tools on job sites, not the teenager who rode in the passenger seat quietly, watching the world go by, but a man with confidence I couldn't recognize. He sat across from me, leaned forward, and started talking about growth, expansion. He said we were leaving money on the table. He said all the real opportunities were in commercial projects now, apartment complexes, shopping centers, corporate developments, bigger contracts, bigger profits. He spoke fast, excited, fueled by something I desperately wanted to believe was ambition and not influence. And I'll tell you the truth, when he smiled during that conversation, I saw my wife in his face. Emily had that same spark when she talked about the future, about possibilities. And for the first time in a long time, my son looked like my son. I should have asked more questions. I should have slowed him down. I should have wondered why his confidence felt rehearsed, like lines fed to him backstage. But love blinds a man. Family blinds a man worse. So instead of suspicion, I felt pride. He started laying out plans, not on paper, mind you, but in words. He said Derek knew people, investors, partners, big connections. He said we could get funding, get insurance, get contracts lined up before a single hammer was lifted. He said we could grow Turner contracting into something more, something bigger. I didn't like how often Derek's name came up, but I pushed that aside. I didn't want to be the old man standing in the doorway of progress. I didn't want to be the father who told his son no because of fear. I wanted him to feel the company belonged to him too. That one day, he wouldn't just inherit it, he would deserve it. So when Michael asked for access to the accounts, so he could move quickly when deals came up, I didn't hesitate. I signed the papers, legal papers, bank authorization. I handed over keys that were never just keys. I remember the pen in my hand felt heavier than usual, like it knew what I didn't, like it wanted to warn me. But I pressed down anyway, wrote my name where a father believes trust should be unquestionable. And from that moment forward, something shifted, not all at once, not loud, no lightning strike, just small things, little details. Michael stopped asking for advice and started telling me what we were doing next. Derek began showing up more often, not as a guest anymore, but like he had a stake in the place. Meetings happened without me. Discussions continued after I left the room. Accounts I used to check suddenly had less money in them explained away as investments, deposits, business expenses. I asked questions, but they answered with confidence strong enough to make doubt feel ungrateful. I told myself to trust. I told myself this was what handing down a legacy looked like. I told myself a son should be allowed to lead, but trust, real trust, is supposed to feel safe. This felt like walking on ice and pretending not to hear it crack. Then came the day the biggest contract we had ever secured was announced, without me even knowing we were bidding on it. A commercial development on the north side of town, millions on the line, reputation on the line. And I wasn't even in the room where the papers were signed. Michael told me afterward like it was something casual, like he was updating me about the weather. "Dad, we landed it. This is at the expansion you always dreamed of." Except I had never dreamed of expansion. I dreamed of stability, of family, of building something steady, not something swollen with risk. But I smiled. I forced it, because I didn't want to crush the look of victory in my son's eyes. Then came the loans. Big loans. Loans in the business's name. Loans I never would have approved. Loans that relied on everything working perfectly. And business, real business, never works perfectly. There are delays, errors, costs nobody plans for. I asked where the investors were, the partners, the connections Derek supposedly had, and each time I was met with smooth answers. Quick words, too quick, but the final moment, the moment I should have walked away, stopped everything, demanded proof, was when Michael said, "Dad, don't stress. Derek managed most of it. He's basically carooning the business. Now, Kodash running, my family name, my life's work, my sacrifice, handed over without my say." But I stayed, silent, because a father keeps believing, keeps hoping, keeps praying that his child would never use his love as a blade, and that was the beginning of the end. Not loud, not dramatic, just a signature, a smile, a trust given to the wrong hands, and I didn't know it yet, but the ground beneath me was already crumbling. I remember that morning with a kind of clarity I wish I didn't have, the kind of memory that doesn't fade, doesn't soften with time. It just sits in the chest like a cold stone. I woke up before the sun, like I always did. Habit, routine. The body remembers the rhythm of work, even when life no longer matches it. I brewed my coffee slow, the way I'd done for years, 2 scoops, water just below boiling. The house was quiet, but my life had been quiet for a long time, so I didn't think much of it. But as I stood at the window, the same window where I used to watch my trucks start up every morning, engines coughing to life, men greeting each other with tired jokes, so I realized something was missing. There were no trucks. Not a single one. The driveway was bare, empty, like someone had erased my world overnight with a damp rag. At first, I thought maybe they left early. Maybe they were already at a job site. So I reached for my phone to check the schedule. Nothing, no messages, no missed calls, no updates, just silence. A creeping, slow, unfamiliar kind of fear started rising up in me, not panic. Just that quiet realization that something has gone terribly, terribly wrong. The kind that hits a man in the gut before the mind understands. Why? I opened my laptop and logged into the business account. The screen loaded slower than normal, and maybe that was the universe giving me one last chance to walk away before everything in me shattered. Then the numbers came up: balance $47.16, not 47,000, not 4,000, $47.16. 30 years, 30 years of aching hands, sore knees, stiff shoulders, 30 years of roofs, foundations, framing, sanding, ceiling, sweating through winters cold enough to crack pipes and summers hot enough to boil asphalt, reduced to dollar for 7.16. At first, I didn't understand. I stared at the screen like maybe I was reading it wrong. I refreshed the page, logged out, logged back in. Nothing changed. So I pulled the transaction records, and that's when the truth hit like a hammer to the ribs. Multiple transfers, large ones, all marked clean and simple, authorized by my son, authorized by Derek, authorized using my digital signature, forged so clean you'd think I signed it myself. They didn't just clean out the account, no, they changed everything. The business registration, the ownership rights, insurance, equipment, titles, truck leases, every legal document that made Turner Contracting, all of it transferred. My name had been reduced to a historical footnote. They didn't leave me the company. They didn't leave me a percentage. They didn't even leave me my tools. They took everything, everything I ever built. My hands were shaking, not from rage, but from disbelief. Because betrayal hits different when it's not an outsider, when it's your own blood, your own child. I drove without thinking, straight to Michael's apartment. I didn't speed. I didn't slam the doors. I didn't shout up the stairs. I walked slow, steady, because something inside me had already gone quiet. He opened the door like he'd been expecting me, like he'd practiced his face in the mirror. He looked relaxed, comfortable, like the air around him had gotten lighter while mine turned to concrete. "Hey, Dad," he said, like it was just another day. I didn't speak, not at first. I just looked at him, and he smiled. A smile that didn't belong to the boy I raised. A smile that came from Derek. A smile I'd seen before on men who believed they'd gotten away with something. "Dad," he began, leaning one shoulder against the doorframe like he was hosting a damn barbecue. You were holding the company back. Times are changing. The way you run things. Old-fashioned. Derek and I, we're modernizing it. Expanding it. Evolving it. Evolving. That word hit me harder than the empty bank account. And you, he continued, with a casual shrug. You can relax now. Retire. You've worked enough. Retire. Like I was a dog being told to go lie down in the yard. All I could hear was Emily's voice. From decades ago, whispering, protect him. Guide him. Raise him right. And I thought I did. God help me. I thought I did. My chest was burning. Not anger. Not yet. Just heartbreak. That heavy, suffocating heartbreak that doesn't make you shout it, makes you still. Michael waited for me to yell, to curse, to demand, to break, but I didn't. I swallowed every ounce of pain, every drop of betrayal, every word that could have spilled out and turned the hallway into war. I looked him dead in the eyes and said, quietly, okay. His face flickered not with guilt, not even with confusion, just relief. He thought that was it, that I'd accepted it, that the story ended right there. He didn't know that silence is where men like me plan. He didn't know that calmness is where storms begin. He didn't know that I was already tracing the footprints they thought they'd covered, because you can forge signatures, you can move money, you can change papers, but you can't erase the truth, and the truth always comes home. Revenge, real revenge, the kind that doesn't just strike back but changes the course of a man's life, does not begin with yelling or smashed furniture or fists hitting walls. No, that's the kind of reaction fools have. Men who want to feel powerful for a moment, then watch everything crumble anyway. Revenge begins with quiet, a stillness so deliberate that the other side doesn't even realize the storm is already forming. That's what I had now. Silence, stillness, and time. I didn't call the police, not yet. I didn't find a lawyer, not immediately. I didn't go banging on doors demanding justice. No, I let them believe it was over. I let them believe I was done, that I was tired, that I had accepted my so-called retirement. I let them believe I was just some old man who had finally given up the wheel. Greedy men get bold when they think no one is watching, but they also get sloppy. So I watched everything. I paid attention to the things they didn't think mattered, the little things. The things you only learn to notice when you've spent a lifetime reading men's behavior, not their words. They thought because they moved fast with paperwork that they had erased me, but they forgot that the world runs on trails, digital, handwritten, spoken, recorded, tracked, logged, time-stamped, and I had been in business long enough to know where every single one of those trails led. So I spent my days gathering, not shouting, not crying, not mourning, gathering, email, message between contractors, suppliers, banks, brokers. They forgot I still had admin access to the old company server, bank statements, printouts of every wire transfer, every withdrawal, every internal note typed by a banker who assumed no one would ever read it, paper trails, signed contracts, loan agreements, internal memos. They had forged my signature on at least 6 documents. They thought they did it flawlessly. But forgery is like a lie. There's always a seam where it splits. It's time stamps because time is the one thing criminals always underestimate. If you sign paperwork in one county at 9:14 a.m., you sure can't be across the state signing something else at 9:22. And I noticed recorded conversations. I didn't need fancy equipment. Just a phone placed carefully on a table during a friendly chat with people who were more loyal to me than they were to Michael or Derek. Workers talk. Suppliers talk. Bank clerks talk. People who have watched you treat them with dignity for decades will talk, especially when they've seen instead how your betrayers treat them. Every lie they told, I caught it. Every signature they forged, I traced it. Every account they moved money into, I followed it right down to the routing number. And here's the part that felt like watching a slow motion train wreck while I was quietly collecting every nail, every screw, every brick to build my case. Their beautiful new venture was beginning to crumble. Not because of anything I did. No, because they built a house out of greed, not wisdom. They thought money was the foundation of success. But money is only fuel. Fuel burns. Fuel disappears. Fuel explodes if handled by idiots. What holds a business together is reputation, work ethic, relationships, honor, integrity, showing up, keeping your word, doing what you say. You'll do when you say you'll do it. They had none of those things. They walked into contracts with slick smiles and shiny promises, thinking that would be enough. But promises don't pour concrete. Smiles don't frame houses. Cocky confidence doesn't earn loyalty on a job site. And when suppliers realized I wasn't the one signing the checks anymore, they paused. When workers realized Michael and Derek didn't know how to lead, they hesitated. When clients didn't get updates and deadlines fell behind, they started calling around. And do you know who they called? Me. Not because I asked them to. Not because I pushed for it. Not because I hinted or suggested. It becalled me because my reputation didn't vanish. When they stole my money, my name still meant honesty. My name still meant reliability. My name still meant Turner Contracting. If someone else legally owned it, the cracks were forming faster. Now, delays, complaints, fees, penalties, and then the worst enemy of any business. Word of mouth. Once that turns against you, you're done. Derek didn't understand that. Michael didn't understand that. They thought success was about who owned the company. They didn't realize success was about who the world trusted. Meanwhile, I kept gathering evidence quietly, patiently, like a man sharpening an axe. Not swinging, not threatening, just honing the blade, because revenge, real revenge, is not loud, it's precise, it's patient, it's clean, and when it strikes, there is no second chance. It took 3 months. 3 months of silence. 3 months of letting them believe they had succeeded. 3 months of watching them strut around town like roosters who thought they owned the barnyard. They were everywhere, shaking hands, taking meetings, acting like they were prodigies who had discovered fire. Folks who didn't know the truth thought Michael had finally stepped up, and that Derek was some kind of business mastermind. They walked into diners, smiling too wide, speaking too loud, paying tabs like they were kings, buying loyalty with tips and swagger. Thought money made a man important, but a man isn't measured by what he takes. He's measured by what he can hold, without losing himself, and neither of them could hold anything without dropping their soul, right? Through the cracks then came the County Development Review. Meeting, a required yearly meeting, nothing special on the surface. But it was public, recorded, and attended by bank reps, city officials, contractors, investors, inspectors. The kind of room where reputations are either strengthened or destroyed. Michael and Derek walked in together, matching suits, matching confidence, matching arrogance. They clapped backs, shook hands, greeted people like celebrities arriving at a premiere. They didn't see me when I entered. I sat in the back. Quiet, still, they stood up front, ready to present their new company identity, their expansion dreams. Their vision, their PowerPoint slid onto the projector screen like a victory banner. And then it was my turn. I didn't shout, I didn't storm, I didn't need to. I simply stood, chairs shifted. Someone whispered my name. Michael saw me first. His smile flickered. Just a flicker, small, quick, but I saw it. He recognized the silence before the thunder. Derek saw me and smirked. He thought I was there to embarrass myself, to beg for scraps, to look pitiful. Let him think it. I walked forward and set down a binder, then another, then a flash drive. The room went quiet, not the polite quiet, but the kind where air turns heavy and people realize something irreversible is about to happen. The county chairman cleared his throat and asked if I had something to present. I said only one word. Yes. I opened the binder and began laying out evidence like bricks. Emails showing deliberate deception, signed contracts with my name, forged in pen strokes that didn't belong to my hand. Bank transfers to private accounts. Loan agreements filed using false authorization. Recorded conversations where they discussed getting the old man out of the way. Every page I turned landed like a hammer strike. Every document was another nail, sealing the truth shut and tight. Then I plugged in the flash drive. Audio played. Derek's voice clear as clean glass saying, "Once we push him out, the company will finally make real money. The old man won't know what happened until it's done." A murmur rolled through the room like thunder. Michael tried to speak, tried to explain, tried to reach for me with words like "Dad," but that word didn't mean anything anymore. I didn't look at him. Not once. I wasn't there to argue. I wasn't there to plead. I was there to finish. The board members, people who had known me for decades, sat frozen. Some shook their heads. Some closed their eyes like they were grieving. Not for me, no. For the boy I had raised, who had willingly cut his own lineage down for greed. Then the decisions began. Contracts, revoked commercial permits, suspended business license, flagged for investigation, bank accounts, frozen pending fraud review, loan creditors, notified of unauthorized signatures, state auditors, triggered automatically by multiple red flags. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was clean, efficient, final, of one moment. They were standing tall the next. The floor disappeared underneath them. Derek's face drained of every ounce of color, like someone pulled the soul right out of him. His voice cracked when he tried to speak, crumbling under the weight of consequences he never imagined would land. Michael just stood there, silent, small, like a child caught in a lie too big to undo. He didn't call me Dad again, not once. The room emptied slowly, whispers floating behind me like smoke, some full of shock, some full of disappointment, some full of pity. But I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. Felt the quiet kind of final, the kind of ending that doesn't celebrate, just closes, because revenge isn't fireworks. It's the moment when the world finally recognizes the truth you already knew, and that day the world finally saw them for who they really were. 2 weeks passed after the collapse, and the house felt different, not quieter, but heavier, like the walls themselves were holding something they couldn't say. Autumn had begun to settle in, the kind that comes with slow winds and leaves that fall without sound. I was sitting on the porch, staring at the yard I had mowed for 30 years. The same porch where I once taught Michael how to hold a hammer, how to sand wood, how to be patient. And then I saw him walking up the driveway. He didn't come in loud. He didn't come angry. He didn't come proud. He came like a shadow of the boy I raised, slow steps, shoulders slumped, eyes red like he hadn't slept in days. He didn't knock. He didn't cross the last 3 steps to the porch. He just stood there, breathing like every inhale hurt. For a moment, I saw him at age 7 again, standing with scraped knees, holding his broken toy, waiting for me to fix it. But this wasn't a toy. This was something too big, too broken, and he was the one who smashed it. His voice was soft, fragile in a way that felt unfamiliar, like it wasn't shaped by ambition anymore, but by loss. "Dad," he said, and I don't know how such a small word could sound so heavy. "We were just trying to grow the business. We weren't trying to destroy you. I didn't mean for it to go this far." And for a second, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to pretend that the boy I taught to tell the truth was still somewhere inside him. But the thing about betrayal is that it changes the shape of people. His eyes weren't apologizing. They were begging for a fix, for a rescue, for the same father who always cleaned up his messes. It hit me then. He wasn't sorry that he took everything. He was only sorry that he lost it. He wasn't grieving what he did. He was grieving the consequences. And that was the moment something inside me settled. Not anger, not revenge, not victory, just understanding. Some losses aren't loud. Some endings don't explode. They simply close. I looked at him not as a father looking at a son, but as a man looking at another man who had made his choices. And I said, quietly, evenly, like I was closing a chapter that had been written long before the betrayal even happened, "Son, you didn't lose the company. You lost your father." There was no yelling, no slamming, no dramatic storming away. I simply turned and walked inside. I closed the door gently, not to hurt him, not to punish him, but because some doors are not meant to stay open. On the other side of it, I leaned my hand against the wood, and I felt something break, not loud, not sharp, just a soft, final snap inside the heart. And that was the day I realized revenge doesn't end when the guilty fall. It ends when you stop carrying the weight of what they did. I didn't rebuild my business out of desperation. I wasn't clawing at my past, trying to glue together something shattered. No, I began again because a man is not defined by what is taken from him. A man is defined by what he can create after the loss. When you've given 30 years to something, when every board and beam carries your sweat, your name, your pride, it becomes more than work. It becomes a language. It becomes the way you breathe. And I wasn't ready to stop breathing. The first day I went back to the workshop, the air tasted different. Dust in the sunlight, pine shavings on the floor, the smell of old tools. Everything felt like a memory waking up. I stood alone in the middle of it, and it was quiet, but not an empty quiet, a steady one. A quiet that waits for the sound of a hammer striking wood again. Word travels fast in a small county. They heard what happened, not because I told them, but because truth always finds its voice. The first call came from an old client, a man whose kitchen table I'd built 20 years ago. He said, "If you're working again, I want my new deck done by you. Not your son, not your team, you." Then another call, then another, and then men I had taught, men who used to look at me like I was unshakable. They came to my shop one by one, not with apologies, not with pity, but with tool belts and work gloves. "Boss, if you're building again, we want in. No anger, no gossip, just loyalty. The quiet kind that doesn't have to prove itself." I didn't post anything online. I didn't make announcements. I didn't try to clear my name. I didn't need to. People remember how you treat them. They remember who shows up. They remember who keeps their word. Reputation is a kind of love, and love, when it's real, doesn't die. Work came slowly at first. A porch here, a small restoration there. But slow is not the same as weak. Slow is steady. Slow is intentional. Slow is how you rebuild something stronger than what fell. As weeks passed, we were laughing again. Tools clinked. Radios played. The trucks rolled out in the morning sun like they used to. And one evening, while sweeping sawdust from the shop floor, I realized something. I didn't win by exposing them. I didn't win by watching their world fall apart. I didn't win by proving I was right. I won by staying who I was, because character is a foundation, and mine was poured by a man who taught me that your word is your spine. My father didn't raise me to be clever or ruthless or hungry for more than I needed. He raised me to be steady, to work, to show up, to keep promises even when no one is watching. And Emily, God rest her heart, she loved me because I lived by that. She saw the quiet parts of me, the parts that didn't need to brag or shine. She knew who I was long before the world tried to tell me who to be. Michael, somewhere along the way, he forgot those things. Not because he was evil, but because somewhere the world convinced him that power matters more than pride, that winning matters more than honor, that success matters more than love. But life has a way of reminding us that everything built on greed eventually crumbles. So I stand here now, not a wealthy man, not a broken man, but a whole one. A man who rebuilt his life plank by plank, the same way he built it the first time. Not for revenge, not for validation, but simply because a man needs purpose, and I have mine.
Dust settled. The contracts were revoked, the accounts frozen, and the company slowly being rebuilt in my own hands. I sat on that same porch where I had watched Michael grow from a boy into a man who thought he could outsmart life with charm and shortcuts. The air smelled faintly of autumn leaves and sawdust, the sun warm but low in the sky, like it was bowing out after a long day. I could hear the faint hum of trucks in the distance, the rhythm of work coming back into the life I had built from scratch. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a deep, steady kind of peace, not the explosive relief that people expect from revenge, but the quiet, grounded satisfaction that comes from knowing the truth, enduring the betrayal, and standing back up again. I thought about Derek, about Michael, about the foolish belief they had in shortcuts and shiny promises. They were not evil men. Not really. They were just greedy. And greed, I realized, doesn't change a man. It exposes who he has always been. Greed is a mirror held up in front of your soul. It doesn't disguise. It doesn't pretend. It doesn't let you hide behind a family name, a reputation, a relationship. What it shows is raw, unfiltered character. And the character of the man who tried to betray me, it was hollow, fragile, brittle. It cracked under the weight of its own lies. Family isn't measured in DNA. Family isn't built in kitchens or in shared bloodlines. Family is loyalty. Family is honesty. Family is respect. I've been lucky once to know what real family felt like. Emily showed me, my father showed me, my true employees showed me. That was the foundation they could never touch, the core of me they could never steal. I had poured into my son, hoping it would take root, hoping it would grow into the man I knew he could be. And when it didn't, I had to accept that not all seeds sprout, not all promises keep, and not all children become the reflection of the love you gave them. And yet,